Thank you for staying with us. In commemoration of International Women's Day, Women of Substance International is hosting a conference tagged Women's Conversations here in Lagos. The event, themed Accelerate Action on the Rights, Equality and Empowerment for Women and Girls, aims to foster discussions on the 12 critical areas of concern and action plan from the Beijing conference. 5 distinguished speakers will delve into pressing topics such as women and health, women and poverty, women in the media, violence against women, and women in power and decision-making. The conference will bring together women from diverse sectors, NGOs, and CSOs. Joining us in the studio is the convener of Women of Substance International, Onyegbule. Ife, good morning. It's good to have you here.
Good morning. Good to see you.
You're looking as colorful as ever.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Great, great. Now, let's begin with 30 years on from the Beijing conference. Have we been able to address gender disparity, have that solidarity as women to also address the issues that were outlined at that conference so far?
Okay, so I would say that we're getting somewhere. We're not there yet. Because when you look at it, the essence of that conference was to see how to bridge the gap, but that's not happened. It hasn't happened, at least in this part of the world. In some other areas, you find that women are all over the place. And when I say all over the place, you look at in politics, some people have been able to attain the 50-50, 50%. But here, we're not there yet, and you see all sorts of discriminations as it is. So those are some of the issues we want to take a look at with what it is that we have put together.
I'm wondering why you think that we've not been able to get there yet. We've seen women groups like yours have conversations, table so many things. Over the years, we've been tabling things. And I'm wondering why this conversation is not getting us close to that.
So it's not getting us close to our destination because of the issue of patriarchy. You understand what it is. Patriarchy is a major issue in this part of the world where people think that you cannot do something because you're a woman. But then I'll say to you that we have moved from where we used to be. We're actually inching towards there, but we're not there yet. And I'm hoping that we will get there. Because if you look at some of the conversations that they discussed at that conference, it was, they looked at issues that had to do with women in poverty, women in health, women in governance, women at the grassroots, a whole lot of issues. But some key things, stuck out. And that's what it is that a lot of women groups are looking at, to see how we can get to where it is that we want to be from where exactly that we are. And I'll say to you that we're trying. Women are doing great these days.
Absolutely.
See, the
look at you, for instance.
You can say that, but I would give it to my governor for him to step out to say, look, let's go fishing, look for someone who's able to do the job and bring the person home. As it is, I'm home. Being in Imo State and working there. And there are some other women too that he's called to say, come and work with me in the government. So you're right to say, look at me. There are other women too who are doing great things, but we still need more women, to step forward and take responsibility.
Will your event tackle this problem of women not asserting themselves a lot? Maybe because of the patriarchy you just talked about and because of our traditions and all that. In Singapore, for example, women have organizations that are moving things, in entrepreneurial strides, in the medical field and all that. But we don't seem to have a lot of that in Nigeria. Are you going to address this and maybe propose solutions and encourage the women to go ahead?
Well, no one event or no one woman group can actually achieve all of that. It's a collective responsibility. And as I say to you, we're there. You just talked about Singapore now. You just talked about that. When you look at the history of what it is, when you talk about that country, you know what we're talking about. But right here, you have groups. There are so many things militating against what it is that you're doing. But yes, the conference that we're having, we have 5 key speakers who will be talking about different issues. Let me take, for instance, the issue that has to do with the reportage of women. I'm sure right on this table, you'll all agree with me that when issues that have to do with women come to the fore, there is some kind of tinge that the media gives to it, because people understand that negative stories sell. Negative stories, you know, those are the ones that quote and unquote blow. Those are the ones that actually trend, and people exactly, and people latch onto it. But no one is looking at the other side of the story. So we're saying, look, the person who's going to delivering that lecture, let me say, is your CEO. She's going to be talking about what it is and how we can give fair representation to women issues, and of course report them in positive light. I think that's what the media needs to do. But when it comes to reporting issues about the men, people want to see the good things, the great things that they've done. But as long as it's about women, you see people focusing on the negative aspects. Something happens, they say, oh, the woman did this, she did that. No one has asked the question of why this is the way it is. So I'm saying that the conference will address a lot of these issues. We're looking at women in the grassroots. There's a veteran journalist who's actually a queen now in a kingdom where she was married into. She's dealing with women at the grassroots. We'll look at those issues affecting women in the grassroots, and why it is that it's difficult for some of them to move exactly from where they are. There are women who's going to be talking about widows, what it is that widows are facing today. The issue of patriarchy also. You find that a woman whose husband dies, they will always say it's the woman who killed the husband. No one understands that something could have happened why that man had to expire. But really everyone focuses on the woman.
So if you want to talk about women and leadership positions, for instance, we are governed by women in TVC, for instance. If you talk, you mentioned the CEO, you mentioned the HR as a PCO, you mentioned the news director, you mentioned Veronica can help me.
But I'm sure you all feel it.
For anchors.
I'm sure you all feel it now. Now women are in charge.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So this is a gender.
But this is where I'm going. It is not peculiar to Africa or Nigeria.
Absolutely.
Because if you look at world over, according to this data, it said as of 2021, only 21 countries have 7 women as heads of state or governments, and 119 countries have never had a woman leader. US, for instance, has never gotten a woman president. We saw what happened in the last election. So women supporting women is something, we want women to be there. But then women supporting women at a grassroots level when it comes to politics is another ball game entirely. How do you think we can address this, this issue? So, you're not iffy about it? Okay,
very iffy. There's so much iffy about it. There are so many things iffy about it, but when you look at it, I feel somehow when it's the man that has to raise the fact that you don't have women supporting women. There are women who support women. I support quite a lot of women. I have women who support me also. But you would not cherry pick and say, oh, because this woman has said no one is supporting her, you now generalize. I do not think so. Yes, there are some bad eggs, some women who try to, pull other women down. When we talk about, you know what it's called, when you say people are crabbing, they're in a bucket or a basket, they are crabbing and clawing others down. You don't want the other women to come up. But that's not to say it is something that will stop you from reaching your goal, from attaining your goal. I've had such women who didn't want me to inch forward. But let me tell you, when you succeed at what it is that you're doing, these are the same women that will file behind you and say, yes, I know that person. So I never want to dwell on the negative. I want to focus on the positive and see how we can get to raise another generation of women who will also hold the hands of other women and help them climb.
Very, very important, very important. I like the fact that we are looking at the intersectionality of these issues as well. And there's a cross-section of persons that I'd like for us to also address the matters of their equality, which are persons with disabilities. They seem to be not part of certain conversation when it comes to gender equality and their rights and all of it. And I'm wondering if this is also forming part of the conversation that will be had on that day.
All of these things will be talked about. There's a young lady who's coming all the way from Abuja, and that's another lady who every day she says it. Oh, it's Sister Ify that gave me, she gave me the link to all of the things that I do today. Because I said to her, you can tell your story. You're the only one who can tell your story. You don't let anyone tell it for you, because they will embellish the story and tell it. And she started, starting from radio, went on to television. She's telling her story. And her story is peculiar to what other women face. So yes, this conference will address all of that, because I think every and any woman should be at the table. I used to have a boss that says to me, no matter how small an organization is, it must be big enough to accommodate Deadwood. And that's something we need to ponder. You know, no matter how tiny the table is, no matter what kind of conversation that you're having, you must be able to make room for every woman to be represented at that table. We may not all sit at the table,
That's right.
but their interests need to be discussed, and we're going to look at that. We're expecting the people from the domestic violence response team in Lagos. We expect that they'll be there. We're also looking at women who have worked with some of these women in their NGOs. They'll be there and they'll look at some of these issues.
Domestic violence is something, sorry, that has caught my interest for a very long time. And the women happen to be the ones that suffer from that a whole lot. I think it should be given a lot of interest, it should be given a lot of discussion in your conference, and clear punitive measures should be made, should be thought of. Enforcement of our laws is an issue.
Right.
And it's affecting women as far as domestic violence is concerned. Are we going to have a position paper that says this is what will happen if you are caught doing this? But we also have to recognize that domestic violence also has men taking the short side of the stick too.
Let's not talk about the men now.
Let's talk about the men.
No, my interest is the women. Maybe when we start having International Men's Day, the men can come out. But
you're looking at me.
Which man will come out to talk about his wife?
Gossiped about this earlier.
They have. We need to find a way around it. But
right.
I know there are some organizations that talk about men, but my focus is on women. And you've just talked about domestic violence. I tell you, when things go wrong, it's the women that are hardest hit, as it is. Talk about poverty, is women and children. Talk about domestic violence, it is women. Some people don't even understand that it's not when you lay your hand on a woman and you say that she's been molested and all of that. So yes, we're going to have that conversation. You just talked about position papers. There have been position papers over and over. There are laws that says if you do this, this is what you're going to face. Well, you know how it is here in Nigeria. When somebody knows somebody somewhere, he does something wrong, before you know it, the whole community is begging. Some, they go to bring their traditional rulers to come beg and all of that. But yes, Dr. Josephine Efachukuma, she's of the Project Alert on Violence Against Women. She'll be looking at that issue. She'll be talking about it extensively. Ending violence, the key to national development. You can imagine a woman who's always facing violence. How does she come out to do her job on a day-to-day basis? It's not going to work. So we'll be talking about that. We'll be having that conversation. Hopefully when we're done, there will be a communique and we'll take it from there.
Absolutely. So I want you to also spare a thought as regards exactly what are we looking at. We talked about equality, empowerment, etc. Is it about equality or equity? Because sometimes you say, if you look even religiously, you're asking the question, men and women are equal. But when you talk about equality, are we supposed to do 50-50, for instance, like a husband and wife, for instance, as they do outside of the country?
Why can't we?
So, or are we looking at equity? The way you treat me is the way you should treat, I mean, you treat the male folks is also the way you should treat the women folks. So what are we looking at? Is it equity or equality?
Equality, equity, and all of that. Equality is just it. I don't know why sometimes when the men hear the word equality, they just think you're coming to usurp
their positions.
No, I'm not going to take over your position. I shouldn't take over your position because I have mine. So a lot of women do not understand how powerful they are. Everyone in this life was birthed by a woman. Is there anybody who came by a man? So that's how powerful that a woman is. And women need to understand that. So it's not a competition.
No, except Eve, that was created from the man's rib.
Let's go into that. Right. You know, so we need to understand that when we talk about equality, it's about whether at work, at play, at home.
Level playing field.
God bless you. That's the word.
That's right.
You can't say that we go to look for a job or we're invited for an interview and you say to me that he's going to be paid more because he's a man. You don't say that to me. And that's why I say to young ladies, you've got to work 10 times hard and better, so that you can be better than any man that they bring, you know, to you. People say it is harsh for me to say that, but I say no. When you're training yourself, you need to train yourself to get to that stage where you say, look, I am as good as anybody can think of, and you can never overlook me. So when we talk about equality, that's what we're talking about. Not to say I'm coming to take over Etomaidu's responsibility as a biological male. It is not possible. But we also need to understand that this issue of gender roles, we need to do something about it.
Something like that.
You can't say you have girl children, you have male children. Okay, girls, you have to go and stay with your mom in the kitchen. That's where you're supposed to be. Guy, go and play with your dad, or go out, come back when food is ready. No. Everyone should be able to do whatever it is that's in the house. Contribute and get to do it, so that kids don't begin to feel, oh, this one is loved, that one is favored. Everyone do the job, do what you can, and prove yourself.
Interesting. Earlier on, you mentioned that there's been so many papers, communique, and all of it. Although you're coming up with communique, I'm wondering what makes this conference different from every other conference that we have seen in Nigeria, and how you intend to push this conversation forward beyond the conference, such that we have a policy in place. He mentioned it earlier, something has to be done to move us forward at the end of the day. Okay,
so we're going to continue to talk. You know, you can't say because what it is you've been asking for hasn't happened, then you relent, you don't talk about it. We'll continue to talk. After all, they had conversations around some of these issues in 1995. It's 30 years on. We've moved from where we were at that time, and we're inching towards where it is I want to be. But we won't get there in one day. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles, it starts with a step in one day. So that's what we're doing. We will continue to talk, and that's why we'll have women from, you know, different sectors. There's a woman who's going to be talking about health. Not many women understand what it is when you talk about their health. People say to you, what I don't know doesn't hurt. And that's not true. You need to know what is going on in your body. And that's why we're saying we will continue to have these conversations, talk to women. Now, look at women who have attained menopause, for instance. You go to see your doctor. Some crazy things are happening to you. Like for me, you know, I used to have this hot flash, and I was wondering what's wrong with me and all of that. Until I spoke to a doctor, and he said to me, look, this is where you are now. It is menopause. You have those hot flashes. Sometimes you're confused. You're wondering what it is that's going on. Now, when women come down with things like that, because with age, a lot of things begin to appear.
That's right.
You need to understand your body. When they go to the doctor to speak to the doctor says to you, so how old are you? Mark you, your doctor might have an idea how old you are. Because they've taken your, what's it called, your vitals, they've checked, they've looked at your file and all that. And the doctor asks the question, how old are you? She says she's 43, she's 45. Why are you telling lies? So women need to understand that whether you like it or not, aging is something that will happen. How do you embrace it? So the conversation won't just be about violence against women or poverty and what have you.
Okay, very quickly, because of our time, you're really running out of time. So who are those that are expected to attend this? Is it for free? Is it open to us, Toma and myself?
Can the men attend so that
can we attend?
Of course, the men can attend. There are men who are for women. They are called he for she.
He for she.
Yes, there are men who support women. There are so many men like that. So the conference is open to all women. All women need to attend the conference, because you get to learn one or two things from there. The men can also come, so that you can get to understand why your wife acts the way she does.
Different from what Ilahi talks about in his own book.
Exactly. Why she acts the way she does. Then it's a free event, but registration is compulsory. But it's free. And you also come there, you get to network, you get to meet people who can get to mentor you in the course of your job. Not many of us understand that we need mentors at every stage in time of our lives. I have a mentor. I'm 52. I still have people who mentor me.
Absolutely.
You know, no matter the heights that I've attained in broadcasting, there must be someone who talks to you behind to say, do it like this.
I have one as well. Yes. So I'm accountable. Anyway, but this is where we have to wrap up the conversation. Ife Onyegbule, convener, Woman of Substance International. Thank you so much for your time, for bringing the color to this set this morning.
Thank you.
You feel proud.
Of course. Of course.
My pleasure.